Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webcast, Accounts Payable Optimization, 3 Ways to Improve Performance and Reduce Costs. We're very excited to have all of you on board, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. My name is Anne-Marie Cochia, Director of Marketing at Canon Business Process Services, and I'll be your moderator for today's webcast. Before we get started, I have a few quick housekeeping notes. To eliminate background noise, all participants have been muted. You will only be able to hear our presenters speak. If you'd like to ask us a question, you may do so at any time by clicking the Q&A button in the WebEx dashboard on the right side of your screen. Type your question and click Send, and we'll try to address your question before the end of today's session. Because we only have a limited time, we do apologize in advance if we are unable to answer your question online, but we'll be sure to follow up with any unanswered questions after the webcast. Lastly, we will be sharing an archived version of today's program as well as the deck with all of you after the webcast is complete. Today's agenda, I'd like to quickly go through what we'll be talking about today. So we have a study that we'll be presenting, the Accounts Payable Optimization Report, what it means to have an optimized AP process. We'll go into the highlights of the study, 3 ways to improve performance and reduce costs, and then we'll be concluding. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our esteemed panelists for today. Ted Ardelian has over 25 years of experience working with clients on improving their business processes. He has presented at industry conferences and written numerous articles on a wide range of business process outsourcing topics. He has a great deal of expertise in achieving accounts payable goals and improving business processes for clients. Secondly, we have Brian Cassidy. Brian is an experienced business process outsourcing advisor here at Canon Business Process Services. He has over 20-plus years of experience helping companies achieve their business goals through finance and operational process improvements. Brian works directly with clients to understand their needs and identify, recommend, and implement appropriate technology, business processes, and solutions. Ted and Brian, we're so glad to have you on board today, and we thank you for carving out time to share your expertise.
Thank you, Anne-Marie, and welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. It's nice to be here.
Okay, Ted.
So before we get into the core of the presentation, for those folks who are not familiar with Canon Business Process Services and who we are and what we do, allow me 30 seconds or less to update you on that. Canon Business Process Services is a division of Canon USA, and we have been in business providing outsourcing services to large organizations, mid-sized organizations for over 30 years. Our services include business process outsourcing, such as accounts payable, document processing, student financial aid, claims processing, and so on. Our other services include document process outsourcing, such as imaging, records management, print management, mail management, as well as office services such as reception, and we also provide electronic discovery services, including physical and digital collection, coding, EDD technology, and so on. Our methodology and service delivery is primarily on-site with offshore and off-site processing centers for efficiency and lower cost. We like to differentiate ourselves by providing or including Six Sigma process excellence as part of our process enhancement and also technology enhancements as well. So with that, as Anne-Marie said, we are going to share a study with you which will be available to you through the email following the broadcast, but also through our website. And this year, or this summer, actually, this late summer, we asked the IOFM to survey its membership, and we have an interest in the processing side of AP as opposed to the technology or the volumes and things like that. We wanted to know more about what's going on inside the process, how are organizations processing AP, how are they managing the AP function, and so on. Of the respondents, 32% were executive level and 55% were AP managers. We released the study officially at the IOSM AP Expo about, I guess, 3 weeks ago in October. So as I mentioned, as a service provider, we work with clients processing invoices, and our interest is always in how do we improve that process? How do we do it better? How do we do it differently? So we wanted to ask questions like, are you in a shared service center? What are strategies? What are the strategies you are using to implement efficiencies and drive productivity and improvements? We wanted to get a sense of what is the balance today between manual work and automated work. We hear a lot about technology, but as I think you will learn from this study, there is some debate as to how far technology is being used, whether it's used effectively, and where organizations are with respect to the adoption of technology across the AP process. We wanted to also know what activities within AP organizations, AP managers, value the least. They think that offers the least value, and therefore it is an activity that they would rather have somebody else do because they might be able to do it more economically and more efficiently. So we don't have time to discuss every question in here. We selected about 4 or 5 questions that we think provide some highlights for discussion, and after that we'll offer our thoughts and ideas about improving the process. So that's kind of what the study is in the background. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian to talk about a little bit about what we mean by an optimized AP process.
Great. Thank you, Ted. So what do we mean by an optimized AP process? Essentially, that breaks down into 3 key components. And you might find that your organization is nowhere near any of these key components or has tried to attempt one of these key components. Maybe you've implemented one of these successfully, but you haven't done the second or the third. And so what are they? Well, an optimized AP process really begins with the centralization and the digitization of your invoice collection process. So instead of taking in invoices, paper invoices in multiple locations across your organization, you have your suppliers send those invoices to a central location where information that you need to process that invoice and pay it is collected off that document, off that paper invoice electronically, and it's put into electronic format. That's a big step in optimizing your AP process. Once that step has been taken, it's in place, you're then in a position to take the next step, which is to deploy an automated workflow process for routing the invoices that need to be coded and approved. You're also in a position to evaluate your resources, redeploy people into more higher value-added tasks. No longer are people necessarily needed for the mundane key entry tasks, but they can be freed up now to pursue more valuable tasks like reporting, user support, things of that nature. And then once workflow has been implemented, you're really now at an advanced state and you're ready to engage your suppliers into the e-invoice process. And briefly what that means is suppliers would sign on to your vendor portal where they can view their purchase orders, where they can view their invoices, where they can view their payment information, and where you can hold them accountable for maintaining their master data, maintaining their bank details, if you will. Through that portal, they can submit invoices electronically, which ensures that every invoice is a perfect fit. It has everything on it you need in order to process it and pay it. Unlike an invoice that comes in via paper that you would scan and then extract the information you need, there may be something that's missing off that invoice. In fact, at about 5 or 10% of the time, that's going to be the case, and you need to have a process to deal with it. But we avoid those issues when we get our suppliers to submit invoices electronically through a portal. There are benefits to doing that. Some suppliers will resist, of course, but the benefits, we think, really outweigh the additional work that suppliers take on by submitting them electronically. They can view where their invoice is in the process. They have the assurance that they know the invoice has been submitted, it's been accepted, there's nothing wrong with it, and they can see who it's been routed to for approval. They can also see when it's going to be paid and if it's been paid. They don't need to call AP any longer, send somebody an email or ask somebody to, do them a favor by dropping what they're doing and researching 3 or 4 invoices that they're waiting payment on. So that's a very key step in the optimization of optimizing your AP process. Ted, you want to move us to the next slide?
Great, so let's transition to some of the questions in the study. We've asked a bunch of questions, and as I said before, some were more interesting in terms of revealing new data that typically other surveys may not. One question we asked, what are the top 3 AP activities that cause your AP department the greatest pain? And the results that you see on the screen basically reveal that processing in the intake phase, the processing of approvals and discrepancies, and the invoice intake phase, the receipt of the invoice, manual conversion, it could be some form of electronic conversion as well, but the receipt and conversion of invoices take up the, drive the most pain inside the AP function. Supplier onboarding was a kind of a surprise coming in at the 5th after the intake and processing. And supplier inquiries, I suppose, go on hand in hand with the intake process as invoices are being received and entered in the system. There is that activity or interface with suppliers who are following up on invoices, wanting to know the status of invoices and so on. Utility bills is something that organizations, AP departments find painful in terms of processing. Compliance and record keeping is the other one, and we had in the report you'll see a few other options that we asked about, but those were selected the least. We also, before we go any further, we would like to ask a poll question here because we would like to compare what this audience, how this audience responds to the questions that we have in the survey.
Okay, so our poll question for today is, what is your top AP improvement priority in the next 12 months? Is it automated workflow? Is it implement scanning with OCR data extraction? Is it implement a vendor portal? Initiate e-invoice enrollment program? Enable vendor self-service? If you can take a moment, we'll wait a few seconds here, and if you can respond to the question. We'll just take a moment here. I see we have a few responses. Let's see.
So while we wait for the poll, in the survey, question 19 basically asks a similar question, and hopefully the answers from this group match that. We'll see. But basically, in question 19 in the survey, we've asked, what are your top 3 improvement priorities for the next 12 months? And interestingly enough, the first 2 or the top 2 choices had to deal with faster processing and reducing costs, and that was automated workflow for invoice approval and exceptions, and automated workflow for basically automated workflow for both approval and exceptions. We gave them 2 choices, but they both came in very close. Electronic payment solutions is another one, which basically deals with the payment phase of the AP process. And thirdly, document imaging and automated data capture came in third. What is interesting from this survey is that more people, roughly 40% or so, are looking for automated workflow for approval and discrepancy than the 22% looking for imaging and data capture solutions. But in the survey, when you look at the survey, you will see that in question 8, we also asked the question about the format of the invoices, and 83% said that the majority of their invoices require manual conversion or manual handling. So it's, we find it interesting that people are reaching for the workflow automation phase to automate the approval and discrepancy, but they may be overlooking the front end, which is the receipt and conversion of invoices, which again they reported as being one of the painful activity within the AP process, and probably the one that needs to be automated first in order to eliminate manual data entry, eliminate the paper from processing, shorten the cycle time, and reduce the cost of data entry and so on. So we thought that was kind of interesting. You want to review the survey results?
Yeah, so it appears as though we have about 67% have responded that automating the workflow is the top AP improvement priority over the next 12 months. So Ted, what do we have anything to add on that?
Well, it mirrors the survey results, which is the majority are looking at workflow automation. As I said, the interesting thing here is whether or not they have automated, truly automated the intake phase, which is extracting the data from the invoices so that you can eliminate the entire manual process, or have you adopted, maximized the invoice adoption to eliminate, again, the receipt of hard mail and conversion. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting that the people participating today mirror the people that responded to the survey. And it's easy to see why implementing a workflow, an effective workflow process, would have such a big impact on an organization. It gets AP departments out from under that constant duress. There's visibility to who has what in their approval queue, when they got it, what it is, when they actioned it. And if you then take the further step down the road and you've got a supplier portal now, suppliers have the opportunity to see where their invoices are in the approval process if you configure it that way. So yeah, it's very clear why this would be at the very top of the wish list.
Okay. Another question we asked, question 20 in the survey, what is the biggest obstacle to implementing your AP improvement initiative? And I thought this was sort of revealing in a sense, but the way we summarize it is as follows. The AP professionals report they don't have what they need to implement their plans. If you look at the pie chart, roughly 75% said competing projects, lack of budget, time to devote to implementing change and implement change or technology or what have you to make the improvements, and the IT resources that are needed is the problem as to why they have not implemented the strategies, initiatives, projects that they would like to implement. The next question, question 7 in the survey, we've asked, which of the following strategies does your organization currently use to drive efficiency, to drive or improve productivity, to reach that high-performance AP level. And the number one choice they responded to was automated clearinghouse, again, dealing with the payment process, and P-cards following that, which again deals with the payment process. Document imaging as invoices are coming in, and electronic data interchange, similar to e-invoice, truly electronic transfer of invoices without any manual data entry were the second. T&E automation was the third, and migrating suppliers to e-invoicing was the fifth, and automated workflows for invoice processing and discrepancy was the sixth. So what is interesting here is that we also asked a question about OCR, using optical character recognition to extract the data from the invoices, and the response was down around number 9 or 10 on the list, which again points to me suggests that they are comfortable using scanning and using images to process, but not all organizations are truly automating that front end using the automation that's available today. So with that, those are kind of about 5 points of discussions that we thought were interesting. There's more in there about e-invoice adoption that I thought was very interesting. I think you should review that and see what you can take away from that. With that, I'd like to pass it on to Brian to talk about ways to improve performance and reduce cost. Brian?
Okay, so yeah, thanks, Ted. So I think let's just talk a little bit more about what we mean by these 3 steps. And the first one, of course, is centralizing and digitizing your invoice ingestion process. So this, as I mentioned, this really lays the groundwork, the foundation for future process improvements down the road. And really what this means is that you've got everything in one place. You can put your arms around your known volume at that time. You can turn things around much quicker. And getting it into an electronic format means that you can now electronically segregate invoices that need error resolution, PO invoices from non-PO invoices. You can eliminate the manual posting of these invoices in your ERP that can be automated. That you can, once the invoices are ready for posting and payment, they can be loaded electronically. A lot of benefits from centralizing and digitizing. You're free from paper. Paper gets lost, it gets misplaced, it gets damaged, it gets torn, it's hard to read sometimes. And you're now in a position really to work with your suppliers on giving you better information as well. You're out from underneath the duress of dealing with all of the paper. So that's step 1. Step 2 now is really to take a look at how your resources are allocated throughout your AP organization and to identify and implement a workflow process. Workflow, as we've seen, is at the top of the wish list because it does so many transformative things for the organization, and particularly for AP. I like to say, I like to think of it as a way of holding people accountable. AP oftentimes kind of gets the brunt of disputes like why hasn't something been processed or why are you taking so long to pay something, when the reality is that somebody's sitting on the document, or somebody who doesn't know they should be actioning the document is not even aware of that. Automating your workflow process will eliminate those issues. It will hold people accountable, and it will give people in the organization visibility to see who has what, when they got it, and when they actioned it. And that will close the loop in ensuring that people do what it is you need them to do. So yes, AP is a huge winner in the implementation of an automated workflow, but so are a lot of other people. Suppliers are winners. People in your organization who are in the approval process are winners. Buyers who have relationships with suppliers and often have to hear about how unhappy they are about what it takes to get paid. they're winners as well. It touches on a lot of different stakeholders throughout the enterprise. And then 3, the optimization phase, is really a couple of things. This is where we're encouraging our suppliers to onboard, register with the vendor portal, and submit their invoices electronically, because as I mentioned before, and it's worth mentioning again, that invoices that come in through the electronic process, through a portal process, those invoices, you can control what's on them. So they can't leave anything out. They have to include everything on their invoice that you need downstream to process and pay that. Even things like backdating their invoice, you can control that. You can control invoices that come in the wrong currency. You can control invoices that come in without backup or without an explanation. So it really refines the process. It does put more of the effort on to the supplier upstream to get it right. But, you know, the benefits of them doing that are that, 1, they know when they're going to get paid. They have the comfort of knowing that the invoice is in the system that's been accepted, and they know when they can expect payment. All right. So now that we've talked about what an optimized process is, and there's a lot of appetite out there for getting your organization to this state, we thought it would be valuable just to take a step back and say, well, what does it take to get there? How would we go about doing this? In fact, you've probably embarked upon this endeavor, maybe in fits and starts, you know, maybe more. Maybe you've had an organized effort inside your company to make these things happen. It's worth indicating and reminding ourselves what it takes. You know, and some of the key things are identifying who the key stakeholders in this process, in this transformation process, are going to be. You know, clearly the AP people have a huge stake in the success of the transformation of your current process to an optimized process. But clearly your CFO does. You know, the people that work in your treasury group who are, you know, tasked with managing cash, they have a stake in how this process works. Your suppliers have a stake. Your buyers have a stake. Identifying those people and employing an effective change management program where there's constant communication is critical to ensuring that your effort is going to be successful. You're also going to need to engage IT. There's information exchange between your payment system, your ERP system, and vendor portal or your workflow process. They're going to need to be involved. Testing the new process is critical. You'll need users to sit down in front of monitors and step through the process using test scripts, sign off on this. Training is going to be critical. And then post-go-live support. You need a strategy for training people and then supporting them after you go live on the new process. So some of the things to think about, if you haven't, about what you're going to need to be prepared for in order to get to an optimized process.
Great. So the alternative obviously would be to consider outsourcing what you can in a strategic manner. And what we are seeing with clients is that they take steps in implementing their improvements. And one easy step is to take a look and outsource the front end, the receipt to ERP phase, as we like to refer to it, that invoice conversion and scanning and data extraction and validation. Today, validation could be included as part of that process, where we can test the invoice against your PO system and prior paid invoices and things like that. We can match line items, and we can electronically make go, no-go decisions or accept, reject decisions. And that basically results in a valid invoice going into your workflow, and invalid invoices, duplicate invoices, get trapped and either returned or stopped at the door. So that's one step that you can take. The next step or the other steps could be processing, outsourcing the processing and the AP support that is necessary to process the invoices. And again, this is up to you depending on the situation and the number of people and your comfort level with where you would like your process to take place and how it will be managed. And the other thing to consider is technology. As Brian was saying, do-it-yourself will need to address technology implementation, and that could be painful, that could be long-term, that could require capital budget, whereas you may be able to get that technology with the invoice intake outsource. So you can avoid that technology, and you don't have to worry about OCR technology 5 years from now, and you don't need to worry about tweaking, validation rules and things like that. So it's up to you in terms of how far you can take it as far as outsourcing, but you could tap shared service centers and a lower cost base. So with that, we're getting at the top of our agenda here, and we would like to remind you that the survey itself is available on our website, and as Anne-Marie said, we will be sending it to you. The survey reveals that most businesses still manually process the majority of their invoices. Invoice conversion and approval and discrepancy are a great pain still, and you could consider AP assessment as a first step. Brian, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, before you embark upon an effort to transform what you're doing, it's very, very helpful to sit down and really assess and understand your current state. I mean, if you have the luxury to benchmark your organization, that would be a terrific thing to do. Most organizations don't have that luxury, so, but taking the time to really evaluate where AP is happening in your organization, sometimes there are AP processes that exist in regional offices that are flying below the radar screen. So that kind of knowledge, information, and inventorying, if you will, what's going on throughout your organization will be very helpful for you in making these changes happen effectively in the organization.
Okay, and finally, we believe 3 steps that can be taken to improve the overall process and optimize the AP function and reduce the cost is centralize and digitize that front end of invoice intake, automate approval workflow, and the labor, and also maximize the use of e-invoice so that you could avoid some of that data entry and time consumed in handling invoices. I think that concludes our presentation.
Yes, that concludes today's presentation. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. We hope you found today's insights helpful. If you have additional questions for Ted or Brian, or would like to learn more about how Canon Business Process Services is helping other companies cut costs, reduce invoice cycle times, and advance AP performance, please contact us directly at the email on your screen. Thank you again, and have a wonderful afternoon.